Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Larry James. My company is Speak with Larry, no spaces. And today I have a guest for you guys by the name of Lomit Patel. And he is Vice President of Growth at IMVU, responsible for user acquisition, retention, and monetization. Prior to IMVU, Lomit managed growth at early stages startup, including Roku, IPO, Trusted ID, acquired by Equifax, Texture, acquired by Apple, and Earthlink. Lomit is a public speaker, author, advisor, and recognized as a mobile hero by Liftoff. Lomit's new best-selling book called Lean IA is part of Eric Rye's The Lean Startup series and published by O'Reilly. The book provides a practical advice on how startups can scale up growth significantly faster when you combine a lean team with the judicious use of artificial intelligence and automation. With this book, companies can learn how to run tens of thousands of simultaneous marketing experiments across all digital channels with a constant focus on delivering real business value to their organizations without the overhead of manual processes or intervention to usher in the new age of autonomous marketing. Was that pretty much what we're going to talk about today, Lomit?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there,
It was.
I know, man. For a while, I thought you were going to run out of breath, but
But
you stuck in there. I appreciate that.
I'm practicing reading those bios because, those are very,
Yeah.
I didn't realize how important those were. Let me start out by asking you, you're a speaker too, right?
Yeah.
So how was your anxiety when you began that speaking journey?
Anxiety. So in terms of nerves and yeah, because I know what I know one area that you're passionate about, like me, is personal development, right?
Right, absolutely.
Yeah. So, for me, one of the best ways to grow is to put yourself in uncomfortable situations, right? Because and so I have tried to do that, and personally as my philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of public speaking, for the most part, I still do get nervous, but it's like anything else. The more you do it, the better you get. It's just like practice makes you better, right? And so when I first started, the way I used to prepare was I tried to like memorize a lot of the speech or whatever that I was going to say, and I would get really nervous, like if I didn't have some kind of like monitor to prompt me, like what am I saying, or I would stick behind some podium. Mm-hmm. And what I realized is ultimately you got to find your own style, right? Everybody has that. I mean my strength is really what makes me unique, and nobody has that. Just like your strength is what makes you unique.
Absolutely.
And early on in my career, people would kind of say, hey, you speak a little funny, in terms of like, hey, your accent's a little different or whatever. But what I found is that's kind of my strength, because it helps differentiate me from somebody else that's out there, right?
It really does.
That, and then the other part is that it's like, if you're going to give a perfect speech and, and everything else, you might as well become a robot. I mean, being a human is embracing your imperfection as much as as much as your perfection, right? Nobody's perfect. And that's the truth, right? And what I come to realize is when it comes to public speaking is, for the most part, people don't really listen or don't really capture the words that you're saying to a large extent. It's your body language, your energy, and your passion in terms of how you're saying it, which is more important. That's what I've come to realize. It's like, the message may be a great message, but the delivery is more important, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so that's what I've tried to work on over the last couple of years. So, what I found is I've gotten better at just being comfortable with being uncomfortable in terms of my own skin. So instead of like, trying to like overanalyze, like how is someone going to sort of perceive me, it's more like, the fact that I'm up there, I mean, as you know, that's one of the biggest fears everybody has, is even just speaking in public. Like I
Absolutely.
used to be, like I used to be the shy person to even ask a question, you know, in a conference, and now I'm like up there, you know, it's like it actually feels, it feels good, because the more you do it, the better you get. But I think the biggest takeaway for me has been, it's just like being an athlete. You know, if you look at the greatest athletes, whether it's like Michael Jordan or anybody else, what made him great is the things you never saw them doing, which was the amount of
Mhm.
time they put into practice, you know, creating those habits, and mentally being ready for stuff, right?
Right.
Because and so one of the things that I've gotten really better at is 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 visualizing things. So in my mind, even before I give a speech, you know, I try to like meditate a little bit, close my eyes, and and I'm practicing in you know, in front of mirrors to myself. I try to record myself, go back, take a look at, hey, how did that sound? How did that not sound?
Right.
But
Right.
the point is, you know, just putting the time into practice, but also visualizing the fact that you're delivering this great speech, you
Mhm.
know, and mentally just make it, reinforcing the fact of having this visual, you know, this visually seeing it happen before it actually happens. So
Right.
then it kind of sets you up where you get a little bit more confident when you
And
get
one of the
out.
things I realize is that it's not going to go exactly according to the way you set it up. There's going
Yeah.
to be some technical difficulties or something go along the process that kind of, make you have to adjust, which is really what makes you sharper, is because you're able to adjust kind of on the fly, right?
Yeah, and that's the same thing with life too. It's like, I feel like, obviously this is, I'll take this as an example. COVID-19 is tough. A lot of
Mhm.
people going through hard times, but you know, part of the reason why people are finding it really, really challenging is because people are so rigid in the way that they want things to happen, you
Mhm.
know, and when it doesn't meet certain expectations, that's when the stress level really goes up. It's like, I wanted this, why can't I go out, why can't I, do this, why can't I do that? and
Mhm.
and the thing is, what I found is, obviously, you know one of the benefits of growing up poor is that you have to start figuring out independence from a young age, right? Because no
Absolutely.
one's going to be giving you you know a, a trust fund, so to speak, right?
Exactly.
but but
Exactly.
but the other thing to come out of that is you have to learn to adapt to any situation, and so it's like anything. If, from a young age, if you're growing up in an environment where you've had to adapt to whatever happens, every day is never going to be a perfect day, and you just have to kind of adapt to whatever the situation is. It builds up resilience. And so today, with COVID-19, one of the things that I've come to like, that's kind of helped me in life in general, is that I adapt pretty quickly to whatever's going to happen. And so, so the trick is really to instead of fight something, embrace that change. Because the
Gotcha.
quicker you embrace the change, then you can kind of pivot and then figure out, hey, this is going to happen whether you like it or not. The more you fight the change, the more miserable you're going to be. So now embrace this is going to happen, and take a step back, take a deep breath, and focus. How can you respond to the situation, to what it is now?
Exactly. And that's one of the things
Yeah,
I find to be helpful too, is that, the old saying, if it doesn't kill you, it'll make you stronger, right? And that's a fact.
exactly.
Yeah, that's a fact, because, a lot of
Yeah,
times as you're adjusting, you actually learn something new about yourself, right? That you
yeah,
didn't know, that you're actually more resilient than you thought you were, right? And you're able to kind of think clearer when you're in, like, I heard some people say things like they work better under stress or under pressure.
yeah.
I'm not really one of those people, but I adjust. I'm kind of like you. I adjust to situations, so it makes it looks like you're working better under stress. But in all actuality, I like them to go a certain way. You know what I'm saying? So you have to set them up to go a certain way, and if they don't go that way, then you have to adjust. Right?
Right. And then, like I hear that a lot from people too. It's like, I need to, have a sense of like stress or whatever to, but between you and me, you know, if that's what's really driving you, it's like, you can create that sense of urgency in your life without needing to be pushed to the edge to do it.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of what's happening now, like with COVID-19, where people are being forced to make changes. But the thing is, change kind of happens in your mind before it happens around you, right?
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
and so, it's like, you don't need to be going to extremes to be having to be forced into making changes. If you can create those habits and those mindsets early on,
Hmm.
then, like you said, it, instead of um, adapting to whatever's happening from a position of stress, you kind of coming at it from a position of calmness, and that's the biggest strength, is being calm in
Hmm.
when there's a storm around you,
Right.
right? Because there's always going to be storms and challenges and situations that are not going to work out. I mean, a quick example is when you get in your car and you're driving the road, you don't know how everybody else is going to drive around you. All you can do is focus on what you can do, right?
Right.
And that's kind of been my mantra in life. It's like, I can't control what anybody else is going to be able to do. So the fact that I try to stress myself out to feel that I can manipulate anybody else, that's ain't going to happen. All
Right.
I can do is focus on what I can do. So that, the more I can focus on what I can control, the less I feel stressed, because ultimately, at least I know what I can control at the end of the day, and do the best with the stack of cards that I get handed every day.
I got you. Okay, so let me ask you a little bit about the book that you wrote.
Yeah.
What was your motivation to write that book? I mean, I know you're in that field, but becoming an author, was that had to be like, is that your first book?
It is my first book, and it's so what motivated me, as you mentioned, I started speaking publicly probably about 3 years ago. I did it a little bit a while back in my career, but then I kind of stopped. But I started speaking about this whole area of AI and automation, and it's actually based on what I practice every day. So I work in a startup, and what I ended up doing was it was to figure out what's a better, faster, and smarter way to grow a business where you're less dependent on humans. As because as the more you're dependent on people, there's always risks and challenges, especially like where I am right now in San Francisco. The biggest challenge we had was you train a lot of people and then they just leave, right? Because they get
Right, right.
paid more. And so turnover is always a challenge, and it's a risk to a business, especially when you're trying to grow any business.
Mm-hmm.
So what I wanted to do was to try and automate a lot of the tasks and processes that a lot of these people used to do on my team. And so whether people, so that way, the team would become a lot lean. So we could get a lot more done with a much smaller team. And the great thing with that is that, it reduces the risk in the business, increases the productivity, because you got less people. So even when things like this come around, like, I was planning for like a recession 2 years ago because I knew the party was never going to go on forever, right?
At some
And
point,
so,
it had to change, right?
yeah, and so that's when I started putting these things into place about automation, and kind of working with a small team, so that whenever this, obviously I didn't expect it to be as bad as it is now, but
Right.
whenever this thing was going to come around, I wouldn't need to let go of people, because that's what I don't want to do, is because ultimately, companies that don't manage their business well are the ones that basically try to either grow too big, or 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 they just don't plan well ahead, right? Which is why you're seeing all these layoffs happening. Because I mean, an example being, companies that that work in retail. Well, for the most part, people know that companies like Amazon are around, are trying to take away your business.
Mhm.
So you should be creating some kind of e-commerce type of
Absolutely.
business. But the fact is, people get complacent because when times are good, people expect the good times to continue forever.
Hmm.
And so, the companies that we're hurting now, that are having all these layoffs, are the ones that don't have any e-commerce. Uh, because if you had e-commerce, then you could still continue and
Absolutely.
have continuity. And the same thing goes with these companies like Uber and Lyft, that were kind of basically built as marketplaces, dependent on people kind of commuting, getting to work, whatever.
Right.
and they go and just hire all these people. And as soon as something bad like this happens, the first thing these companies are going to do is cut people, because ultimately you're just a number, right?
Right.
And
Absolutely.
that's what I didn't want to be. I didn't want to build a or be part of a business where you're just going to use people as pawns, right?
Mhm.
So that's why I wanted to automate as much as I could. But the other part is, in this day and age, we have so much data on people, our customers, than we ever have, because everybody uses mobile devices for the most part.
True.
And so when you're on a mobile device, you're basically leaving this footprint of everything that you're doing digitally, right? And
Correct.
so and so all these businesses that you interact with, whether it's like Netflix or whether it's Google or Facebook, all of these companies have so much information on who you are,
Mhm.
and there's a reason why they want this information, because they want to try to sell advertising, and so my role in companies is around growth. So what I do is I generally work at startups, pretty early. So once they've got a product, as a product doesn't mean that you just put the product out and they're going to come.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. And so my role is to figure out, once you got the product, how do you acquire customers? And then how do you figure out how to keep those customers? And then how do you figure out how to monetize, so make revenue out of those
Right.
customers?
Right.
And so those are the kind of the three pillars that I've always been focused on in these startups. And generally, the difference between the ones that have ended up being successful and the ones haven't is really come down to just following a simple, not a simple, but it's a process. But the big process is to always is to always just run as many experiments as you can to really figure out what's going to work or what's not going to work.
Mhm.
And that's the same thing as I was mentioning, like my personal philosophy is adapting to different things. It's like every day we're running experiments on ourselves too, in terms of like, what are we eating, what kind of news. Like we have a choice. We don't have to watch all that bad news. I don't want to watch that
Uh-huh.
bad news, because that's just garbage coming in my head. I
Right.
don't want to be filling myself up with that 24 hours a day, right? Because I mean, that's just fear. you know I, you know and in terms of like the new reality, how do you adapt to that? And so taking that back to companies, it's like, in order to grow customers and to figure out how you're going to monetize them, you need to run all these different experiments, and you set the right um, um, if you build the right AI platform, then
Mhm.
it enables you to run these experiments to really figure out who are the right customers that you need to attract, what are the right messages you need to give them, and then once they come into your product, what are the right experiences to keep them around, and then what are the right ways to try and monetize them. And so
Right.
you're always running these experiments across the entire user journey to really figure out, what's going to bring them in, what's going to keep them around, and what's going to continue to get them to become loyal users.
Right. So when you're dealing with the different businesses, and when you say startups, are
Yep.
you dealing with people who are doing 100,000 or 200,000 or less than that as a startup?
Yeah. So generally, when I join startups, they basically are making probably like $1 million or less in revenue. I mean, they really have nothing going, right? And
Gotcha.
and and and, and so in order to go from like 1 million in revenue to like 10 million to like 100 million, and then I've been part of business that have gone up to like 1 billion. It's all following the same thing. The difference is, it's running these experiments and learning as quickly as possible to really figure out what's working and what's not working, and just compounding on that, and building on top of that. But the underlying thesis is just having a lot of automating a lot of the systems for running these types of experiments,
Mm-hmm.
so that the benefit of automating this and having artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence is just like human intelligence, except you're getting a machine to really look at all of this data that's coming from these experiments
Okay.
and surfacing insights in real time, telling you, hey, this thing is working versus this thing, like this message is a better message than this message.
Right.
This is a better offer than this offer. And the difference is really about how quickly do you get those insights, and do you apply it and put it into action, so that because time is of the essence, right,
Yeah.
at the end of
Right.
the day.
Right.
And so you keep getting all of these little insights every day, and you keep applying it, and you keep changing your messages, you keep changing the audience you're going to go after, you keep changing you keep improving the product experience based on what you're learning.
Mm-hmm.
And so by making all these, it's like changing all these different dials, and that's what ultimately leads to a company that ends up going from, like, making $1 million to making 10 million to making 100 million. And a good example, I don't know if you've been watching The Last Dance, the NBA thing about the Chicago Bulls that's been on.
Michael Jordan. Yeah. Michael.
Yeah, I
Uh-huh.
mean, I mean, I mean, I mean, I spent some time in Chicago, so a bit of a fan. But
Okay.
but the same thing. If you kind of use the same analogy with sports, I mean, Michael Jordan obviously was a phenomenal superstar, but
Right.
he couldn't win a championship on his own.
That's
He need so it was a matter of bringing in the right pieces, the supporting cast, and moving out the wrong pieces, right? And the
mm,
same thing goes with a business too. It's like, wherever you are, as you start acquiring more customers, what happens is you keep getting more data on users. So when you get more data, then you start figuring out, oh, you know what, you know, uh, you know, you know, now we can go and attract other types of users that are even more likely to buy the product than who we used to think used to buy the product. So
right.
you continue to expand the number of followers and users, just like with Michael. I mean you can't replicate Michael Jordan, but you could replicate, like, which areas are his weaknesses that you can fill in the gaps.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so to bring it full circle, the quickest way businesses grow is through paid user acquisition, which is where you're paying, and spending your advertising money.
Mm-hmm.
And so a big way of the big difference between companies that do that smartly and the ones that don't is ultimately using artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence gets you to really hone in on personalizing who's the right user that you need to be messaging at any given time, and what's the right experience you want to give them when they come into your product that's going to keep them around,
Okay.
and then what's the right offer that gets them to continue to spend more time, more money in your product.
Interesting.
And what we ended up doing at my current company, which is Ambu, which is a social avatar network mobile gaming app, uh, is that it's kind of like Facebook, but it's a virtual reality social network. So we get a lot of users coming in. So we had all this user data, but ultimately, instead of like manually going and, hey, we're going to bet, like, hey, we'll give Facebook, like, I'm just making like rough round numbers, but
Uh-huh.
like $100,000 to Facebook, or $200,000 to Google, and then you sort of trust in Google and Facebook to spend your money and kind of help you. But the problem with that is, all of these people want more of your money, right? Nobody's ever going to say, hey, don't give me less money.
Right.
The
Right.
difference, but the profound change is when you tell these guys, you know what, I have, let's say, $1 million to spend, but you guys have to earn the right to get my money,
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
so instead of giving them the money, you have this machine that's kind of looking at them in real time and seeing, who's getting you the best return on your investment,
Mm-hmm.
based on how you're spending the money, and what type of quality users are coming in, and how much they're spending on your platform. And it'd be really hard for a human to keep connecting all these dots and then changing these
Absolutely.
things.
Kind
And
of.
so
Yeah.
a machine does that. And another good analogy is is day trading. Like a lot of these finance companies. That's where I got my inspiration from. Is because these finance companies clearly have money. Why do they have money? Is because you only get money if they figure out how to make more money, right?
Right,
Because
right.
I mean, at the end of the day, they're all greedy.
That's
And so,
that's the main ingredient, right?
that's right.
Mhm.
And so my role, in all these businesses, ultimately, the only reason why they want to hire me is because they want to make more money, right? And they want to grow
Absolutely.
really quickly. And so I need to think like these finance folks. So, and when I started studying what they do, all of them were building these types of AI intelligent machines and using all of this data from the stock market to really look at trends to really figure out, hey, what are the signals that we should be buying high or selling low and buying high.
Mhm.
And, you know, what people don't realize is when it comes to spending advertising dollars on Facebook, Google, and all these partners, all of these are just like these exchanges. So it's kind of like supply and demand that sort of determines the price on how much you pay for a user at any given time at any given day.
Mm.
Because and so, for example, COVID-19 has hit, and a lot of these big advertisers, like the big retailers, the big travel companies, all of them have pulled their budget out, right? Because their businesses are doing pretty bad right
Right,
now.
right, right.
And so what happens is you know when they pull their budget out, the costs go down.
Mm.
Just like you know uh, you know a good quote from Warren Buffett is, the time to be greedy is when everybody else is being fearful, right?
Right,
and,
right,
and
right.
and to be fearful when everybody else is being greedy.
Greedy,
And
absolutely.
it's the same thing when it comes to people don't realize, but there's a bit of art and science if you're really doing this sophisticatedly, in terms of like spending your advertising budget.
Right.
You know, it's there's always a good time, place to when you want to spend and when you want to pull back.
Hmm.
Because at any given time, there's more competition, it drives the price up, so you're paying more for that user.
Hmm.
You kind of hold back, and then when everybody else kind of uses up their budget, that's when you kind of go in.
Right.
And so having a machine, the machine that I have that I ended up building looks for these signals, like when is there a lot of competition, we kind of hold back,
Hmm.
and we just move it into another partner or another partner.
Hmm.
And then when this partner, suddenly the competition goes down, it moves the budget back there and moves it away from here. And it's basically just shifting money from one partner to another to try
Okay.
and figure out how we should be spending our budget.
Wow. So did you
Yeah,
create the machine yourself?
I kind of helped, yeah, create it. Yeah.
Okay. And so you can use that same machine on several different types of businesses, right?
Yeah, so like you can pretty much use that on several types of businesses. The key is, though, it only makes sense using something like this if you're getting enough data coming in. And
Right.
to get enough data, you got to be spending a certain amount of money, right?
Hmm.
To Otherwise, you're not going to get enough data signals to come in for the machine to get sophisticated and trained into really understanding your business that well.
That makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting. That's incredible. But so as you look forward, let's say 5, 10 years down the road, what do you anticipate yourself doing?
Myself, it's a good question. I would one thing that I've started really enjoying is doing a lot of this public speaking.
Uh,
But obviously writing my first book. It ended up becoming it actually became like one of the best-selling marketing books on Amazon. And what I learned from writing the book, and to answer your question, why did I write the book? The reason why I wrote the book was really because I wanted to try and inspire the next generation of people that are really
right.
looking into
Right.
this. Because ultimately, for me, the journey's more interesting than the destination in
Absolutely.
anything.
Uh,
And so for me, learning is the greatest gift.
right.
Every day I want to be learning, and every day for me is day one. Day one being that whatever I did yesterday, that was yesterday. And the future, I don't really know what the future is, but every day I want to come in and give it my best,
Right.
because
And one of
because
the things I always say is that
yeah,
I always gave this analogy. Let's say you acquire a PhD in some specific field, right?
yeah,
You pass away, you die. If you
yeah,
don't leave a legacy, all that knowledge
yeah,
that you acquired is gone. That's why it's good to write books, create
Yeah.
videos, and we got access to all this technology now. And I'm a firm believer in leaving a legacy for our kids, grandkids, great, on down the line. But not just them, anybody else who accesses this information, right? Because you can learn from it, and it'll move the needle in where you're trying to go in your life. Sometimes people learn better from other people. Like, I know you can attest to some of the people you studied before. The way they taught was effective, but it wasn't really effective to you. And then some people just, just made more sense to you, right? That's why it's good for us to put that content out, because you never know who's going to be watching or listening or viewing, right? But you know that if it's good content, it will help them, if they're serious about what they're doing, right?
You're right. And so that's pretty much, for me, you know, uh, you know, looking 5 to 10 years down the road, my goal is to try and inspire millions of people,
There you go. That's
and I want to inspire people primarily by, just like you said, once I'm gone, the only thing that I have left is what I've shared, right? So
right.
that's why I love writing, a lot of content. I started writing articles before I wrote the book,
Oh, okay.
because I used to like writing when I was young, and then obviously when you start working, you kind of get
Put that
away
on
from
back
just,
burner.
yeah. But now it's like being a child, because I've found my old passion, and what I used to like about writing was really because it makes you kind of take a step back to really articulate your thoughts, right?
True.
And so what I found is the best way I could inspire like my team and people, because I try to mentor a lot of young people too, is you know you know like they can't follow me like 24/7, right? Because actions are better than words. So the
Mhm.
next best thing I could do was take a step back and just articulate the way I think about different problems. And that's why I started writing these articles about different challenges that I had faced at different moments and at different times in different businesses, and how did I sort of tackle it. And from that I started speaking at conferences, and that's when I started talking about a lot more about AI and automation.
Mhm.
And then uh, and then from there, the thing you had mentioned, Eric Ries, he wrote this book called Lean Startup, which was actually one of the best-selling business books. And he's one of the co-founders at the company where I work right now. So
Okay.
when I joined this company, growth was actually going in the wrong direction. This is another tip actually I'll put out there, at least for me. The best time to join a business is either join them really early, because you can come in and you can make a difference. Ultimately, you want to come in and make a difference, right? If you join a company young, then you got a lot of green space to really come in and try a lot of things and help the business grow.
True.
Or you want to join a company when it's actually going through challenges, which a lot of companies now are going through challenges.
Absolutely.
And the best time to join a company when it goes through challenges is that's when they're ready to actually listen to new ideas.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
And
And
as you implement your skills and
yeah,
strategies to that company, once they see that it's moving the level up,
yeah,
then that you automatically increase your value right there at that point, and then you become a valuable asset to that company, right?
right. Yeah. And the best tip I can give anyone, I've been through, a couple of different like recessions. Clearly this is like a whole different uh,
The animal.
animal, but whether through good or bad times, you always got to prove value,
Absolutely.
and value comes from giving rather than taking,
There you go. There you go.
yeah. and,
Absolutely.
and and as long as you like, as long as you're providing value to wherever you're working,
Mhm.
or if you're running a business, because people sort of feel, I've heard people say, I want to be an entrepreneur. Why do you want to be an entrepreneur? Because I want to be my own boss. That sounds great, but are you truly your own boss? No, you're not. Because if you're an entrepreneur, you got to serve your customers,
Mhm.
right? You got to serve your, like, depending on, if the business gets bigger, then you got to serve your board. You got to serve your community. It's not just about you. Because if you're just going in there thinking about what's in it for me, then you're probably not cut out to be an entrepreneur. Right?
You're looking at it from the wrong angle. Absolutely. Because,
Yeah.
I always share that from a biblical perspective. I
Yeah.
like to share this really quickly, is
Yeah.
that we're supposed to give and then you
Yeah.
get, not
Yeah.
get and
Give
give.
and you shall receive, right?
Give first. And when
Yeah.
you're going with the mindset of giving, then
Yeah.
and I always like to add, make it so that people can understand it, because you can talk, big
Yeah.
words and all this, and people can't really understand it. But if you make it where people can understand it, then they can take advantage of it. That's an
Right.
opportunity for them.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that I learned too. That I want to be able to speak in a way where I don't want to use all these like different buzzwords and try to come across as because the thing is, if people can't really understand what you're saying, then
Right.
you're kind of like here and you're not helping anyone,
No,
right?
you're not. No, you're
You're
not.
basically the only thing you're helping is your ego, right? Because you sort of feel,
You
and
see
so
it.
the first thing you want to take out is your ego, and try to relate to people, right? Which is why the book I wrote, one of the best feedbacks I've gotten is just people that have read it are now able to understand things like automation and artificial intelligence, and how they can actually apply it to
Right.
their
Absolutely.
businesses and companies, and it actually makes sense because a lot of these people have have read these other books in the past, or they've spoken to like consultants who sort of use a lot of buzzwords, but
Mhm.
it's like doesn't make sense,
I
right?
still don't get it.
Yeah,
Right. And yeah,
yeah,
like I say, one of the best feelings you have as a speaker or as an
yeah,
orator is
yeah,
for when you leave the stage, people actually understand what you were there to express. What the message you were trying to relay. One of the examples I like to use is I like to take it from my head and put it inside your head, so that when
right,
I walk away, you walk away with the same information, right? And that perspective right there has served me well, because when I deal with startup people who are just starting up small
yeah,
businesses,
yeah,
there are a lot of things that they don't really understand about a lot of the moving parts. But it's you don't want to take them too quickly, because they'll be overwhelmed, right? And when you overwhelm somebody, that makes them want to go in another direction, right? So you want to kind of take little bites until they kind of get their sea legs, and then they can take it on themselves. Because one of my key indicators is for my clients to try to build a business based on what they have a passion for. Like, I can see you have a passion for what you're doing.
yeah.
So did you kind of work your way into that, or did you kind of already know you wanted something that to do with artificial intelligence, or something to do with the internet or the computers or that world?
I can tell you my quick story. There's
Okay.
always a backstory, right? As far as artificial intelligence and automation, that's all recent because none of that really existed,
All right.
when I started working. But just to give you kind of my quick backstory, you know, I grew up in England, and you know, I was when I graduated from undergrad, I started seeing these things about the internet companies like AOL and Yahoo and things like this in the mid '90s that were coming up. But in England, none of this stuff was happening. So I was really interested, like, because I was reading about this, that this seems really interesting because I was naturally like an analytical person
Gotcha.
and creative too, and generally, if you work in marketing, they try to box you into one thing or the other, right? And I didn't want to be boxed, and I thought, how can I get to learn more about this? So I ended up coming out here as a student, and I mean, I had the opportunity to go to some of these like well-known Ivy League schools, but I never had that much money, and I just saved a little bit. So I ended up going to St. Louis, because the cost was cheaper, to
Gotcha.
live there.
Mhm.
And I mean, and so then I ended up graduating from there, but I was looking for a job and I couldn't find a job, and it was kind of disheartening. I was applying for 6 months to different companies, but what I came to realize is that ultimately, uh, you know uh, you know sometimes a door is closed, which means you need to go move to another place to open a different door.
There you
And so I ended up moving to Chicago, and the thing I had to get over, kind of getting my first job, was just my own ego thinking like, oh, I've got this like like MBA, I should be applying for all these types of jobs. And at the same time, I needed a company to sponsor me, and I couldn't really find that. And then I thought, you know what, I'm going to start thinking different. which is I can't follow what everybody else is doing. Ever since I was young, I used, the way that I used to succeed was to try and take a contrarian view to what everybody else was doing. So
Mm,
if everybody was going left, I would be the one that want to go right, because ultimately I don't want to be, the only way I could stand out, I mean, I was never the tallest or whatever, I mean, was, how can I use, how can I make myself stand out from the crowd? Which is why, I mean, most people like my family would be like engineers or doctors or whatever. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to kind of go into like business or,
right, right.
and so I ended up basically getting a job as a front desk assistant, as a temp job at this tech company in Chicago. And the reason why I did that is because I was applying for jobs there, because I knew on their website they had jobs, but the HR, I kept getting all these rejection letters, and I thought, you know what, I'm not going to go through the traditional route, because HR's, I'm not going to get in through HR.
Right.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to become a temp there, and see if I can get to know someone by working in the front desk. So the great thing about working on the front desk, people don't realize this, everybody has to walk through the front desk,
Right,
right?
right.
So you get to know people,
Absolutely.
I may have been earning, I don't know, well, like $7, $8 an hour. I can't remember. It wasn't a lot, but for me, it was an opportunity, because it was better than just sitting at home or going to a library and just applying for jobs and nothing was happening. I had to try and, change trying to change my approach. And so then I realized, once I started working there, I got access to their intranet site, which was like where they would post jobs internally before they put them externally.
Mhm.
And that's when I found a job that was a really good fit. And then I thought to myself, you know what? I don't really know this hiring manager, and I already got the rejection letter from HR, so I'm not going down that route. I'm going to just send a guy an email. You know what? I can email him, because I'm kind of working in the front desk, and I just sent him a quick email to the effect that, hey, I noticed you have this job. I feel like I could be a really good fit. Do you mind it? If I could just, if you could give me 10 minutes of your time. I didn't expect anything to come out of that, but he emailed me back. Long story short, we met up for 10 minutes, and then I told him that, and this is the truth. I had like 7 days before my visa was going to expire, and then I had to go
Wow,
back to England.
wow.
So I told him, and at that time, by that time I had this one other job which I didn't really want, and this was a job I wanted. So I told him, look, I really want this job, and I really think I could be a good fit. However, I need to make a decision by Friday, and this was Wednesday. And I know that, that this company doesn't generally move that fast. However, I know that you're the hiring manager, and you can make things happen if you really want to. So I'll leave it in your hands. If you feel like, I could be, a good fit for you, then, hopefully you'll be able to set up some interviews. I didn't expect anything. And then I came in the next day, and he had set up 8 interviews, and then I ended up getting the job by Friday.
Outstanding, outstanding. See,
Yeah.
there you go, there you go. You took
Yeah.
a chance and it worked out.
Yeah.
Okay, but listen,
Yeah.
Lomit, it's just
Yeah.
about that bewitching hour.
Yeah.
I really want to again appreciate you stopping by. If you don't mind, would you leave an email address or a website for people to come by and or
Yeah.
app place to
Absolutely.
find your
So the best way to get hold of me is, I'm not sure if your users go to LinkedIn, but if they go to LinkedIn, they'll be able to find me pretty easily. And I connect with anybody who reaches out to me on LinkedIn. So
okay,
it's Lomit, Lomit Patel. On LinkedIn, if you search for me. And then the other place, I actually have a blog too. So people can reach out to me on my blog, which is pretty much my name,
uh-huh.
lomitpatel.com.
Okay. And what about how to access your book?
Yeah, and so my book is called Lean AI, Leanai,
Mhm.
and people can either find it on Amazon if they go to Amazon and search for it, or there's actually a website too. It's called The Lean AI, TheLeanAI.com,
Okay.
and they can get a
One
link
more
for it.
time. One more time. What was that? Uh-huh. Okay.
TheLeanAI.com, The
Okay.
Lean AI.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. Well, listen, again, I appreciate you spending a little time with me today. And at the end of every show, I like to end it by saying, my name is Larry James. My company is Speak with Larry. And as always, share with someone else what I've shared with you. Thanks a lot, Lomit.
Thanks, Larry, man. It's been a
Okay.
pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.